When it comes to sexual behavior involving the anus, many people are strongly opposed and even find it repugnant because the anus is a place for excretion, and typically, it's believed that only male homosexuals engage in such behavior, but the reality is not as straightforward as we imagine. According to survey data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States, 35.9% of women have had experiences related to anal sex. I have also asked several heterosexual men, and to varying degrees, they have had this kind of sexual encounter with women using the anus. Does this suggest that heterosexual couples engaging in anal sex are not a rarity? However, this remains a highly sensitive topic, so few people would voluntarily bring it up or admit to having such experiences. I don't believe you. As for whether you want to ask me if I'm just theorizing this time or if I truly have practical experience, then you must wait until the end. Our common perception is that men have a prostate, so when they engage in anal sex, it can be extremely pleasurable, and this kind of pleasure is completely distinct from that with the opposite sex. Even some male homosexuals believe that once a heterosexual man tries anal sex, he can never return to the old ways. So, does this method of entering through the anus provide pleasure to women? I used to think there was no pleasure at all. It was just that many women did it to accommodate men. I came across a study on whether this form of using the anus is a source of pressure or pleasure for women. The survey found that this kind of anal sex is mostly initiated by the man, and the woman follows his suggestion. But indeed, many women who have tried it expressed a fondness for it. One woman described it thus: "I truly desire it. I enjoy it. I can reach orgasm from it. It's a completely different kind of orgasm. This method is entirely different from traditional sexual acts. My body relishes it." I have also questioned several heterosexual men before. One of them told me that he encountered a girl who only likes to have sex with him through the anus. Only in this manner can this girl achieve orgasm. At that time, I thought he was completely deceiving me and I didn't believe his words. But after perusing some research materials, I discovered, did I wrongly accuse him back then? Because some studies have shown that certain girls can indeed reach orgasm through this method of using the anus. Due to these individuals, when they engage in this way, they experience a completely different sort of pleasure. But for some people whose positions are not so close, they are unable to reach orgasm when engaging in anal sex. So that is to say, if you wish to attempt it, then what can you do? There are several precautions that everyone must adhere to. Firstly, both parties must give their 100% consent. In the literature I mentioned earlier, there were several women who were coerced into engaging in anal sex, and without exception, they all expressed extreme agony. The experience was dreadful. Maybe they were compelled by their marital or relationship partners, or perhaps they were raped by strangers, so it's crucial to ensure that both parties are in agreement, because not everyone can accept or is willing to try this, whether it's a man towards a woman or vice versa, because some women do certain things to men, but some heterosexual men are also completely unable to tolerate this approach. Thus, the informed consent of both parties is of utmost importance. Secondly, undergo examinations. This aspect seems to be seldom mentioned. It's highly important to get checked for hepatitis A and HPV. Hepatitis A is transmitted through the fecal-oral route, and some types of HPV can cause anal cancer. Of course, there's also the well-known HIV. Anal sex is one of the easiest ways to spread HIV because the tissue of the anus is very fragile. Once there's a wound, especially an open one, it's very susceptible to virus infection. So, examinations and vaccinations are of significant importance. The third point is to ensure thorough cleaning. Perhaps many are aware that male homosexuals employ the enema method for pre-sex hygiene. So here I won't elaborate specifically on how this method is carried out. You must be mentally prepared. This area is for excretion. Even if you've completed all kinds of preparatory work beforehand, the presence of some colored substances or odors is quite normal. If you opt for this method, you must have such mental readiness. The fourth aspect is to use lubricant. Apply a generous amount of lubricant. Unless the girl undergoes certain physiological changes, you basically don't need to use an excessive amount of lubricant, but it's a different story for anal sex. You need to apply a substantial amount of lubricant from the outset. Apply it on your fingers and around the anus, but be cautious not to use any lubricant with numbing functions. Although it may reduce the pain, when you have a wound, you might not even be aware of it, and it could lead to greater harm. You should also refrain from using any lubricant with numbing effects. The fifth point is to proceed gradually. From the beginning, you should slowly stimulate the buttocks, not merely the anus, but the entire buttock area should be attended to. You can utilize both hands and mouth. You can caress or use your tongue. At the very least, you should continue for 15 to 20 minutes. Only when the other party relaxes can you initially insert your finger slightly. If you enter too hastily, it will cause the other party to experience significant pain and discomfort, leading them to become more tense. The more tense they are, the more difficult it is for you to proceed. Isn't this contrary to your initial intention of trying, or before the actual anal sex? We can experiment with some small toys placed in the anus. Start with relatively small ones and treat the anus as if it were a genuine flower, waiting for it to gradually bloom and truly adapt to the stimulation of the buttocks and the anus. It might take several weeks or even months before one can actually engage in anal sex. The sixth point is to use condoms. In fact, the term condom can be rather misleading. Some people assume that since pregnancy isn't a concern, there's no need to use condoms. Just as I mentioned in the second point, engaging in anal sex can also lead to the transmission of diseases. Therefore, using condoms is extremely necessary. You must switch to a new condom instead of reusing the original one. Don't use it in the anus and then reuse it elsewhere. This is acceptable, but the reverse is not advisable. The seventh point is for both parties to agree on a safe word. From my personal experience, this is quite significant. Then you and your partner might not be aware of the extent to which the other can tolerate. So both parties should agree on a safe word during the process. If either party utters this safe word, you must halt immediately. With the above precautions in mind, I believe that those who are willing to try can gradually explore this aspect. But be extremely cautious. Some people will be very willing to give it a shot and develop a fondness for it after trying. Some individuals are highly resistant and averse to this method of using the anus. Both men and women can attempt and engage in it. So you shouldn't merely comply with your partner's wishes just because they strongly desire it and say, well, I can also give it a try. Instead, you should prioritize your own feelings. It's only when you genuinely have the desire to try that you should be willing to take the plunge. Finally, everyone is quite interested in my experience, right? I have attempted it, but it wasn't successful, haha. All the preparatory work was completed, including consuming clean food, cleaning, using the toilet, and ensuring cleanliness. I was okay with using fingers and rings beforehand, but during the actual act, just a tiny bit had entered, probably just this much. I was in such excruciating pain that I shouted to stop. Due to this incident, I later developed some psychological trauma and have no desire to try or discuss this matter anymore. For the sake of making this video, I reviewed a lot of materials and discovered that women can also derive pleasure from this activity. Well, I hope this video proves beneficial to you, and I also hope it can open up a path for you, if you so desire, to explore the realm of anal sex.